Okay. Hello, welcome back. I'm Courtney and I recently bought my first property and I'm here to basically outline the whole buying process for you if this is your first time doing it, and it can be really confusing. Honestly, before buying this place, I had no idea really how it worked and it felt confusing trying to figure out what stage happens next and what I've got to be ready for. So I wanted to make this video to really simplify things for you in case you're thinking of buying. Now, it's worth noting that I'm from the UK and I live in the UK, so this is only stuff that's relevant to the United Kingdom. I obviously don't know anything about buying in, say, America. Some of the processes may be similar, but that would be for you to try and figure out. So this is for my UK viewers, but if you're from another country and you're interested in knowing how it works, stick around. This is just my experience of buying this flat, which also came without a chain, which I know puts me at a bit of a benefit versus buying somewhere where you end up locked into a chain. So for a first time buyer, your ideal situation is to buy a property without a chain, because then you're not waiting on anyone and they are not waiting for you to wait for anyone. Basically, the shorter your chain is, the better. If you want more of a description of how a chain works, let me know in the comments. I'm not going to run through it all today, but maybe I can film a short if that would be helpful. Let's get into the crux of this. This is just going to be a really casual, chatty video, and I hope it's helpful. First step, the very first thing you want to do is check how much you can borrow, assuming that you're going to be doing it down the mortgage route. A good rule of thumb is 4.5 times your salary. That's what most mortgage lenders will afford you. Some will go as low as, say, 3.5 or 4, but 4.5 is where most of them will put their guess at. You can then get an agreement in principle, and this is super easy. You should be able to do this through your bank, just to give you an idea. So for example, I bank with Barclays. I used their mortgage calculator. It asks you how much you earn, what your outgoings are in a month, what kind of debts and things you have, and then it will give you an idea of how much you can borrow. And what you can borrow and what you can afford are two different things. So this is your first step. This is your maximum, what you can borrow. So you figured out how much you can borrow, and you've got an agreement in principle, which is essentially proof, should you require it, that hey, I have this approval that I can borrow X amount, which shows I can afford this property. For example, the estate agent who was selling me this flat asked me for proof of my agreement in principle and how I would be covering the funds for the property. So I gave them my agreement in principle for, I think it was actually for the full value of the flat, and then I clarified, but I'm going to be paying X amount in deposit, so if anything I can actually afford more than this flat, which obviously satisfied their requirement. Secondly is affordability, and this is incredibly important. What you can borrow and what you can afford can change. You might be able to borrow up to 200, 300,000, depending on what your salary is, if there's two of you, one of you. But after your monthly outgoings, will you have enough to cover your mortgage, your bills, if you've got a service charge and ground rent, if you're buying a flat, and anything else? Will this affect your lifestyle? For me, I could have, on paper, bought somewhere bigger than this, with a bigger mortgage and putting down less deposit. But it would have meant that my monthly payments would essentially mean that I was just paying to live in a place. I wouldn't have had any money spare for my sport, for my personal life, just for enjoyment. And I didn't want to change my lifestyle just because I was buying a property. I just wanted the property to fit into my lifestyle. So therefore, actually what I could afford was lower than what I could borrow. So those are your first two steps, really, is your finances. And this is assuming that you have your deposit already. If you're not doing that already, make sure you're saving up for a deposit. How much you put down as a deposit will depend on what you're comfortable with. Now you can get 5% mortgages where you put down 5% deposit, but some people will put down as much deposit as they can afford. It's your choice, really. Third step is the one that everyone's doing already, is looking for places, scoping out the market, trying to figure out where prices are currently and what's being sold. This is good to just kind of gauge what's around in the areas that you're interested in looking in. And for me, when I got to this stage, I was looking and inquiring purely out of interest. And then I viewed this property as my third one and just knew it was the correct one. So I got very lucky in that sense that I was not looking for very long. In fact, I think I was looking for less than a month before I ended up putting an offer in. So once you've finished your market research, you can start undertaking viewings and inquiries with the estate agents. If you find a place you like, then you can place an offer. Placing an offer itself is a formal process. You have to make it clear that you are placing an offer on the property. You can't guarantee that your offer is accepted. So then comes the period of waiting for it to be accepted. And if you put an offer down with conditions, like I did for this property, then it cannot be accepted until the conditions have been met. For example, there are a couple of charges on this flat that were unclear at the time of viewing. And I said, okay, I want to put an offer on this place, provided you can clarify those charges for me. And once those charges were clarified, then my offer was formalised. Okay, let's say everything's gone well and your offer has been accepted. Unfortunately, if it hasn't been accepted, you need to go back and keep viewing. But in this case, good job. Your offer's been accepted. Next step is where you need to start opening your pockets so that you can appoint a conveyancer and eventually a surveyor. Your conveyancer is essentially going to be the one handling the whole contract and buying process for you. Now, have it be known that conveyancers are rather frustrating to deal with, and personally, don't go super expensive. It's not going to make a world of difference. And I've had the same feedback from a lot of older people who have bought properties as well. Paying more for a conveyancer doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a better service. Choose carefully, go with someone you know who's reputable, who's at least going to deliver the service for you without absolutely rinsing you. They'll then ask about getting a survey conducted on the property, and personally, I would suggest that you arrange for your own surveyor because then you can control the cost, but sometimes they'll offer to place this for you. The surveyor is somebody who's just going to come around and check the condition of the property and advise you if there's any things that you should be cautious of. So, for example, if you're buying a house, say, they might turn up and say there's signs of settlement, signs of cracks. This may make it harder to get house insurance, for example, or there appears to be evidence of water ingress. You'll need to ensure that that leak is still not ongoing. My conveyancer didn't ask for a copy of the report, she simply just asked that it had been completed. During this time, your conveyancer is going to be looking through all the relevant documents and statutory authorities and searches for your property. This will include, if it's in a flood risk area, looking for the title deeds, any historic easements on the property, all of that sort of stuff. And they should then compile an information pack to come over to you with everything in it for you to look through. So my solicitor, for example, gave me a covering note which picked out the key risk items. She'd highlighted things that were the most pertinent for me to look at, which then meant I could look through it all. Thankfully, I work in construction and I'm pretty knowledgeable in a lot of the stuff, so I felt pretty comfortable looking through it. But if you have no idea on any of this stuff, I'd recommend maybe just asking a family member to sit down with you and see if they can help you make a bit of sense of stuff that you don't understand. One key note about your conveyancer is that you will need to stay on top of them. This is going to sound harsh, but the only reason that the whole conveyancing process ended up being finished off for me was because I chased her nearly every single week. You need to be hot on their heels or they'll make you your last priority. So if you need things to move particularly quickly, make sure you're chasing your conveyancer so that you stay on programme as such. Obviously, if there's things they're waiting for, you can't do that much chasing other than asking for updates. You know, they're at the helm of other services sometimes, but it's good to stay on top of it because sometimes they'll forget to do things, trust me. So at this point, you know you can afford the property. You've proved that you can afford it. You've placed an offer on it and it's been accepted. You've appointed the relevant parties to help you with the buying process, and they've completed all of the searches and all the property history that is required. And so let's fast forward and say that we're nearing completion. The first step to actually being able to exchange and complete is to sort out all of the finances associated with it. This is making sure that your deposit is accessible so that when your conveyancer asks you to send them the deposit, it's easy for you to do so. And if you're afforded any grants or benefits from the government, for example, like the Help to Buy scheme, you'll need to make your conveyancer aware of this. They may add an extra charge onto their fee to carry this out, and you'll need to make sure that they undertake that process because it can take a little bit of time to get that money from the government. So they'll need to pull together your deposit, your government funds, all of the things that are making up your purchase price. Whoever you've agreed your mortgage with will have to be able to release it to them. So you have your mortgage coming in from your lender, deposit coming from you, and any schemes coming from the government such as Help to Buy. That all needs to be pulled together, and your conveyancer needs to know that they have that on the dates that they need to. All of that is what allows for exchange to take place. Exchange and completion are not the same thing. Not every property will exchange and complete on the same day. Exchanging is essentially a fancy word for contract signing. All the parties involved will need to sign the contracts, including yourself. This then allows for the funds to be released, and this is managed by your conveyancer, and this is then what moves you towards completion. Completion is deemed to be achieved when all the contracts have been signed and all of the finances have been received by the seller. And that's basically it. Then you complete and you own the property. And then you just need to arrange a date with your estate agent that you can collect the keys. Making sure that you're keeping your estate agent updated throughout this whole process. They will reach out and ask how things are going. Sometimes they'll actually get updates themselves from the seller. Keep them updated so that they know to get the keys ready for you towards the end. This is a really simple breakdown of the process. It's definitely not the most technical, and this really is only from my personal experience, but I just wish somebody had given me a rough outline of these processes before I bought, because it just felt like I was going in circles during the whole buying process. Hopefully this makes it really clear. If you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to field some answers. And all the best with your property purchasing journey. Thank you guys so much. Sorry this is such a short video, and home renovations are going to be coming at some point, but honestly I have just been swamped with life, and I think I might do a week in the life video just to show you guys what I get up to on a day-to-day, because I think that will show you a little bit of the difficulty that I'm having with actually trying to find the time to do what I want to do to the property. But yeah, stay tuned because I think that is coming. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you all. Love the support on videos, and I'll speak to you all soon. Goodbye.